Hello, 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 and welcome to Grime Time. I am live with yous now. Hopefully, I can see some of your comments and be able to respond to yous. Uh, um, and bring up your comments and be able to respond to them in real time. That's the good thing about going live, is that, you know, over the past 2 weeks especially, I've been completely inundated with emails, and you have all been so very kind and considerate in offering your support and your time. So this just offers me a fantastic platform to be able to talk to you about the what's happened this week in politics, but also be able to have a conversation with you. So here goes. Do consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell on YouTube. And we are indeed over halfway to securing our fundraising target on our GoFundMe page, which I'll post a link to in the description to this video on YouTube. So do consider supporting that if you can. On tonight's show, I'm going to be discussing everything from, you might well have guessed it, the police investigation over my interview with David Starkey, but also, the fact that that is an assault on free speech, as well as COVID-19, free school meals, and Kemi Badenoch MP on critical race theory. She was absolutely bloody fantastic, and if you didn't see it, I'm going to be playing the clip for yous a bit later. But first of all, I want to talk about the money machine going burr, burr, burr. Now, UK, you've probably seen this depressing news. Yesterday, the official stats from the Office for National Statistics revealed that UK government borrowing rose to the highest level on record in the first half of the fiscal year. So we now know the sheer scale of the debt burden that we're facing in this country. And, I was feeling quite depressed about all of this, as I'm sure many others were, to be honest with you, until I came across this video of a plain token 83-year-old Yorkshire granny who came to prominence thanks to an interview that she did on a local front street outside of, a Marks and Spencer, with BBC Yorkshire, in which she railed against lockdown and asked the very obvious point of who's going to pay for this all? Who's going to pay for this record UK government borrowing that's reached a massive 246 billion quid, nearly 3 times the previous high, which was after the financial crash? Have a watch of this fantastic lass who I said on Twitter that I could have kissed. She was so completely marvellous.
I think it's all ridiculous. We should never have been in lockdown. All the people who are vulnerable should have been helped and kept on safe. And all the rest of us, I'm 83, I don't give a sod. I look at it this way, I've not got all that many years left of me, and I'm not going to be fastened in a house when the government have got it all wrong. How can we get the country on its feet, money-wise? Where's all the money? By the end of this year, there's going to be millions of people unemployed, and you know who's going to pay for it? All the young ones. Not me, because I'm going to be dead. I think it's all ridiculous.
Bless her.
We should never have been in lockdown.
She was absolutely fantastic, and she's absolutely spot on, if you ask me. And I don't know about all of yous with older relatives, but she very much mirrors exactly what my grandmother says to me. I went back home for a funeral, sadly, during lockdown, and I was obviously told by all the family, don't give your nana a hug, keep away from your nana, you don't want to make her ill. And quite right to have those reservations. But my nana says to us, you are not leaving my house until you have given me a hug. And she just point blank refused. And I think there has to be a certain element where a certain amount of leeway where we say to older generations, we don't deny them of their agency. They have to be able, to a certain point, be able to decide their own risk and what risk they're willing to actually take on in their lives. This lady here in Yorkshire clearly doesn't want to waste the last few years, what might be the last few years of her life, by keeping herself safe. in my eyes, there's no such thing as safe. You're only safe when you're dead. You know, I could walk outside right now and be knocked down on this crossing the bloody road. There's no such thing as safe. So if an 83-year-old like this lady here wants to take those risks, then fine. If my 86-year-old nana wants to take those risks and give her grandson a hug, fine. But we've got to start answering these questions that people like my nana and this lady here are putting, which is, how are we going to pay for everything? Because it strikes me that she's absolutely right. And I reckon we need to look at targeting. We need to look at devoting the might of our resources to the aim of protecting the vulnerable. And we pay for that by placing our key back into the car and restarting the economy's engine. And we can only do that by lifting lockdowns on the rest of the economy and people who, by the way, we know from the data now, we've seen over recent days, face much greater health risks from lockdowns than they do by the virus itself. The number of stories that we've seen over recent days of missed cancer treatments or suicides after people have been propelled into misery, they're all building up and it's getting worse and worse. And I thought it was awful when people tried to characterise the remarks by those like this lady here, and my view as well, as letting the virus rip. That isn't what we're saying. That isn't what the Great Barrington Declaration says here, which you should all check out at Great Barrington Declaration. What is it? Is it .co.uk? .org. Great. So it's great gbdeclaration.org. So you should all check this out. And in it, backed by top scientists, they argue that you should, lockdowns are just delaying the inevitable, really. And as I say, having propelled the nation into squalor and misery, it doesn't appear to me that the government are going to relieve us of that anytime soon. And the lockdown status quo simply can't continue like this forever. I think you'll eventually see people just not following the rules, and then what will the whole point of the whole operation have been? I think the government are going to see themselves becoming very unpopular indeed before too long. And I did an interview earlier today with Andrew Rosendale, a Conservative MP, and he was arguing he's actually lost his role as a trade envoy for opposing greater lockdown restrictions. He lost his job by Boris Johnson's government after he rebelled. And in this video on my YouTube channel, Recent UK, he just makes clear that as a loyal constituency MP, he's starting to hear more and more voices that are in complete dismay by what's happening. He reckons about half of the Tory party, half of their MPs, are now becoming really uneasy about what's happening. So let's see. Anyway, let us know what you think in the comments. I'll have a listen, look at what some of you are saying right now. So Martin says, Martin Ramsey says, I think we need to go for herd immunity now, letting people take responsibility for themselves, plus not blaming all and sundry who's to blame for what situation we're in and any infections we acquire. Well, listen, I think that view's becoming more popular, I do. Because as this lady, this 83-year-old says, yeah, we just can't go on like this. What a fantastic woman she was. Absolutely fantastic. Karen Firth says here, that woman was fantastic. She's 100% right. Definitely. 100% right. I mean, most of you in the comments here just saying we can't go on like this. And I think you're right. My good friend Lucas says, the man, the legend. That's very kind, Lucas. You are a legend. He did a fantastic video for our channel. You should check that out. Karen says, I've heard of many people being refused treatment in hospital because they're exempt and don't wear a mask. Imagine refusing someone treatment in a hospital. Thorpe says, I fully expect large-scale revolt. I mean, I hope not. I really hope we're not going to get there. I don't want us to get there. I obviously don't want us to get there at all. I really, really don't. Anyway, that's enough coronavirus. But speaking of the Conservative Party and popularity, one way in which they are perhaps making themselves unpopular, or, not being very popular at the minute, is their response to Manchester United forward Marcus Rashford. Now, he launched an online petition last week urging the government to extend the free school meals provision for those on universal credit or equivalent into half terms and the Christmas holidays. And yesterday, the government defeated a Labour Party motion to extend free school meals over holidays until Easter 2021 by 322 votes to 261. Now listen, my view on this is that there's a very simple way of stopping families and children going without meals, and that's to stop propelling them into misery and squalor in our response to the coronavirus. You know, when it comes to measures already put in place, the government's put an extra 9 billion quid into welfare and support this year to help struggling families. But to me, it's pretty unrealistic to propose that the state can step in and provide meals for millions of kids every single day of the year. And I know that's going to make us unpopular with some of you. And I've got absolute sympathy with Marcus Rashford on this. I think, more power to him. But... And he's absolutely right that for some kids, their main source of sustenance is their free school meal. But I'm unsure what more he thinks the taxpayer can actually do here. We're broke. As I've said earlier, if we go back to that UK government borrowing reaching a record level in the first half of the year, 246 billion quid. That's not pocket change. We haven't got Jeremy Corbyn's money tree. We've already expanded free school meals and introduced breakfast clubs. We've increased school budgets and universal credit payments. And I think that this is all starting to get into quite unrealistic territory. And now, of course, many people watching this will say, well, Darren, look, the government have wasted billions on this useless track and trace system that broke down because of an Excel sheet. And I say to you, listen, I agree. And I tell you, you've got no stronger an ally in railing against the waste of taxpayer money. I can't stand it. It makes it sick to the pit of my stomach to waste people's hard-earned cash. But there's a real difference in opposing waste and then supporting the expansion of the state to become a parent, basically, to millions of children up and down the country for 365 days a year. We are kidding ourselves if we think that that's affordable or sustainable. And I'm sorry, I know I'll get a lot of hate for this, but I'm afraid it's true. We're placing a weight upon the backs of the next generation from which they won't recover for the rest of their working lives, if they can even get jobs. I don't know what yous all think. Yes, they're all saying, well, some comments are saying if you can't afford to have kids, don't have them. And listen, I think that argument works to a certain extent, but I know from my own background, for example, people get divorced, people end up in hard times, things happen, economics realities change for people. And I understand people end up falling on hard times, but the state simply can't take on the role of the parent and feed kids 365 days a year. That's just not feasible. Like, come on, this isn't reality, It's just completely unrealistic. And I think yous are all agreeing, to be honest with you. Oh, well, that's a nice comment. Peter Copley says, hi everyone, Grime Time is great. What do you think about Grime Time? Thank you very much, Peter. I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic night. I will raise my gin and tonic to you. Yes, I am having a gin and tonic. I know that's not very professional to do it during a broadcast, is it? But hey ho. It's my bloody show. I can do what I want, right? Yes, I think you're all saying it's just not affordable. Anyway, right, let's move on from Marcus Rashford, who I was quite upset with anyway, right, after he thrashed Newcastle United. Was it Saturday or the Saturday before? I can't remember now. Time's bloody flying over. Yeah, so this is just this article here saying universal credit's going up. You know, the government are already pouring billions of quid into helping people and yeah, we can it, man. There's not some unlimited money tree somewhere that we can just pick from. This has all got to be paid back. Howie. What have I got to talk to you about now? Right, now it's time, I think, for Kemi Badenoch. I don't know if you saw this, but she was absolutely brilliant. I can't tell you how happy it made us. She just filled my heart with absolute joy. And, I just thought, wow, this is the Conservative Party actually using their 80-seat majority. So let's have a watch of this.
In race relations, what we are against is the teaching.
Well, actually, I should tell you first of all who she actually is. So Kemi Badenoch is the Equalities Minister and a Conservative MP. I've met her a few times. She's a really canny lass, and she's clearly a very good speaker and very principled as well.
What we are against is the teaching of contested political ideas as if they are accepted fact. We don't do this with communism, we don't do this with socialism, we don't do it with capitalism. And I want to speak about a dangerous trend in race relations that has come far too close to home to my life. And it is the promotion of critical race theory, an ideology that sees my blackness as victimhood and their whiteness as oppression. I want to be absolutely clear. This government stands unequivocally against critical race theory. Some schools have decided to openly support the anti-capitalist Black Lives Matter group, often fully aware that they have a statutory duty to be politically impartial. Black lives do matter, of course they do. But we know that the Black Lives Matter movement, capital BLM, is political. I know this because at the height of the protest, I've been told of white Black Lives Matter protesters calling, and I'm afraid I apologize for saying this word, calling a black armed police officer guarding Downing Street a pet nigger. That is why we do not endorse that movement on this side of the House. It is a political movement, and what would be nice would be for members on the opposite side to condemn many of the actions that we see this political movement instead of pretending that it is a completely wholesome anti-racist organization. There is a lot of pernicious stuff that is being pushed, and we stand against that. We do not want to see teachers teaching their white pupils about white privilege and inherited racial guilt. And let me be clear, any school which teaches these elements of critical race theory as fact, or which promotes partisan political views such as defunding the police without offering a balanced treatment of opposing views, is breaking the law.
I mean, what a fantastic speech. I'm sorry for airing that word. I forgot she used that word in it. What a horrible word. But it's one of those words, isn't it, that really goes through you. It does with me anyway. But listen, now the reason Kemi gave that statement is because, and she made clear, of course, that the government doesn't support and that our teachers should also not be supporting or teaching our kids critical race theory. And that's because recently, during Black History Month, politically charged statements and uncontested political ideas with quite clearly packed with political terms such as white privilege and white fragility have been pushed in our schools. Now, this isn't the language used by anyone who wishes our country well. This is the language of activists trying to really cause trouble. It's the language used by those who want to divide us. This is a country that enjoys absolutely fantastic race relations, and long may that continue. I hope that goes on and on and on. But that's what these activists clearly can't stand. They want to create a false grievance where none exist. And that's why, no doubt, I was recently reported to the police and almost arrested for supposedly stirring up racial hatred by asking questions about the lack of scholarship behind the Marxist Black Lives Matter outfit. And I don't know about you guys, and you'll have to let us know in the comments, I'm really heartened by this rhetoric from the government. You know, someone as fantastic as Kemi Badenoch, a fantastic speaker, just rejecting this as pernicious ideology that says that blackness is a victimhood and whiteness is oppression. These people do not wish us well. I agree with the likes of Douglas Murray when he says we just need to start saying no to these people. We need to reject these people who want to divide us. You know, it's like if you were in a conversation with someone that offered you advice and you knew they didn't mean you well, you would take that advice with a pinch of salt. And then if a mate that you've known for years and years was to offer you advice that you hadn't considered before, you'd probably be a little bit more open to hearing them out, wouldn't you? Because you know that they've got your best interests at heart. Well, I'm afraid that a lot of these activists do not have our country's best interests at heart. They do want to divide us. And we've got, as Kemi has said here, to say no to them. And the Conservative Party, using its 80-seat majority, has got to start saying no to those who want to divide us. So good for Kemi Badenoch, fantastic lass. You know, that clip went viral in both the American and the European press. I was delighted to see it. I hope that the British Conservative Party can actually act as inspiration to those across Europe and in America of saying no to those who wish to divide us, of actually leading the way on this. And the United Kingdom, as I say, as a country that enjoys fantastic race relations, is just able to lead the charge and say no to those who want to divide us. So well done, Kemi. I'm sure everyone in the comments, as I can see, is all commenting right now, are absolutely fantastic. Oh, well, actually, Christine's commented here. That's very interesting, Christine. A Sunderland lass. Good for you, pet. She says, I'm white, live in Sunderland on a council estate, got nought to do, so don't have white privilege, I'm afraid to say. And I'm afraid that this is the sort of conversations that it ends up throwing up. You know, white working class lads on free school meals are one of the most deprived groups in our country. White privilege would suggest otherwise. You know, saying that the whiteness is an oppression would suggest otherwise. And it's just not helpful. It's divisive speech and it must be rejected. And it absolutely certainly shouldn't be taught in our schools. So good for Kemi Badenoch. Absolutely fantastic. And then finally, I don't know if you have seen this. So, I was obviously cleared by the police this week of, the allegation was that I broke Section 22 of the Public Order Act of 1986 for an interview that I did with Professor David Starkey back in June of this year, where we discussed the lack of scholarship behind the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, it set a really dangerous precedent. It was the police threatening to arrest a broadcaster for interviewing somebody. And it was condemned by everyone from the former Director of Public Prosecutions to the likes of Tim Farron and Ash Sarkar, even the communist commentator. And I'm obviously delighted that that's all put behind us, and I can't thank you all enough for the supportive emails and kind words that I had from all of you, because, you know, it really does mean a lot. And I said I would have thought it all the way had they not dropped the charges. But what I'm really worried about is, and if you see in this article from the Times that I've got on the screen there now, the police are arresting 9 people a day in fight against web trolls to combat social media hate speech. More than 303,300 people were detained and questioned last year over so-called trolling on social media. Now, I think actually we need a rethink about all of this hate crime legislation and the way in which we actually approach this stuff, because as we saw with my case, it will have a real chilling effect on debate and speech if a young interviewer who doesn't have a platform like I do faces arrest for interviewing someone that's controversial. Well, they're going to think twice about interviewing certain people, aren't they? And then that places a chilling effect on free expression and freedom of the press. In a country that enshrines those things as our birthright. We are a country that extols those virtues around the world. You know, we scold the likes of Russia at every given opportunity about freedom of the press. Yet in this country, we are putting forward legislation and hate crime laws which are driving a real assault on freedom of expression. And that's really troubling to me. So I hope that my case acts as a catalyst for actually forcing our politicians to have a rethink over all of it, because it seems to me that we're seeing left-wing activists using hate crime legislation to sugarcoat censorship, essentially, and use it as a tool to silence the views and opinions of those that they don't like. And I think the best way to challenge views that you don't like is through more speech, not less. You know, if I say something that someone doesn't like right now, you could disagree with everything I've said for the past half an hour. You are free to either tune out, close your YouTube window or your Facebook window or your Twitter window, and turn away from Darren Grimes and everything I've got to say. Never listen to what I've got to say again. Or you can comment along and say, well, actually, Darren, I disagree with you for X, Y, and Z. That's the way we do things in this country. We have robust dialogue and we reach conclusions about issues through debate and speech. It's the way in which we've reached and advanced as a society for years and years and years, longer than I've been on this planet. And we're putting that at risk by allowing what are primarily left-wing activists to report people for vexatious claims, say they've broken a hate crime, say they're offended by them, and see them dragged through either the court system or facing months, if not years, of legal challenge. And not everyone has a platform like I do. Not everyone knows about the Free Speech Union, which I would urge you all to support if you can. And they are vulnerable to this. So I really do think that the government needs to have a rethink of it all, to be honest with you, because it's the one area where the police seem intent on seeing the hate crime figures go up so they can burnish their woke credentials whilst ignoring burglaries and, you know, at a time when knife crime spirals on the streets, for example, and mothers are too scared to see their children leave the house for fear of them not coming back. Yet their one focus, the police's raison d'etre, appears to be focusing on these hate crime stats or talking about how I saw one police force tweeting about people that menstruate. And you just think, what are the priorities of the police? And to refocus those priorities, I think that has to come from the top. That has to come from politicians. So I hope my case acts as a catalyst for that. And that there is a rethink about this. But anyway, you lot, I'm going to call it a night now. I've rebranded the live stream and called it Grime Time. Let us know in the comments what you actually thought about it. Do you like the name? Do you like the set out? Do you like how it all looks? The way in which we did things? Do you think I should read out more comments more? Let us know in the comments what you'd like to see from the show. What guests you'd like to see on the show, what topics you'd like to see, and all the rest of it. And again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much to all of you for your support. And B says, are you going to do some grime music? No, I don't think so. I think we'll leave that one. Anyway, have a fantastic night, and thank you so much for tuning in. I'll speak to you soon.